Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the current political situation, particularly in reference to the former Prime Minister and the PTI Chairman Imran Khan, and how he wants to proceed forward with the court's proceedings. And unfortunately, the issue of the evasion of court appearances continues, and we see that in the number of cases that have, of course, been going forward with the PTI Chairman, he has managed to get away without appearing in the court for quite some time now. And unfortunately, in the Tosha Khana reference again today, this was something that was discussed and of course citing a number of factors that the PTI chairman earlier spoke about from his residence in Lahore, and mentioned the fact that there are a large number of security threats, which is why he's not appearing, something that was argued against in the courts, and also referred to in terms of the campaign that is about to start by the PTI regarding the elections in Punjab and KP. And so the security threat, of course, remains there as well. Unfortunately, however, we have seen that perhaps another relief has been given to the former Prime Minister, with him expected to appear before the court on March 13th. At the same time, we also know that the ECP has also issued bailable arrest warrants to him and the PTI leader Fawad Chaudhry for their contemptuous remarks against the CEC. And this is, of course, also something that will require him to appear before a court on the 14th of March. Whether or not he does so is still a question mark. And what this means in terms of how these legal cases are going to proceed and will impact each other is an important question mark that we'll try and uncover and understand what is going on. At the same time, we also know that there are other news circulating around the PTI chairman, with the defense minister also putting on claims of the fact that the PTI chairman only wanted to appoint a chief of army staff of his favor to continue his power and his rule. There was also, of course, concern with regards to the chief of army staff and the way that the PTI chairman wants to proceed ahead with his relationship with the establishment, something that is being denied by the PTI, but was reported by a reporter claiming that General Munir had suggested to the president and had asked through him that the PTI chairman meet the Prime Minister. This is, of course, also something that is being denied by the PTI. At the same time, we also know that there is once again a ban on the broadcast of the speeches by the PTI chairman, considering, of course, the kind of statements that have come forward. However, despite all of these instances, we see that in the courts there still is much uncertainty as to how the cases are going to proceed and what this means for the future of the PTI, while simultaneously the election campaigns are continuing. So this is going to be our focus of the show today, and we're going to try and explore what is going on. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi, and we've also been joined in the studios by our guest, Mr. Usama Ghumman, who's the law professor at LUMS, Advocate High Court of Pakistan, and he has joined us in the studios in Islamabad today. Thank you very much, Mr. Usama, for being with us. We've also been joined online by Ms. Ayesha Ijaz Khan, who's a lawyer and columnist, and she's joined us online. Thank you very much, Ms. Ayesha, for joining us and taking the time out to be a part of the debate. Let me start with you, Mr. Usama. When we take a look at the situation in terms of the number of cases that have been going on, it's hard to keep track as to what sort of proceedings are going ahead. But particularly with regards to the issue of court appearances, it seems that now this has become a sort of a trend or a sort of a characteristic of the entire proceedings that we have seen in the number of cases going on with the PTI chairman. How unusual is this? And then if we talk about the relief existing, what sort of a next step forward can you foresee in terms of the way that we have seen previously the legal cases proceed with the PTI chairman, since there have been court appearances that haven't occurred? Perhaps that's a trend that's going to go ahead in the future as well.
Thank you, Sana. Sana, once we see the proceedings that have been taking place with respect to PTI chairman Imran Khan's court appearances, the only parallel in the history of Pakistan that comes to mind is a former military dictator Pervez Musharraf's treason trials. So once he refused to appear before the court, and the similar sort of exceptions he was granted again and again, but at the end he was also tried. But there is no other parallel in our entire political history where one person, and especially a politician, has been given such leeway and a long leash that he has been flouting courts' orders left, right, and center. He has been refusing to appear in courts, and he has been provided exceptional and extraordinary relief by courts. So I think, but he has come to the end of his road, and finally, it appears that the courts, they are slowly and gradually running out of their patience, and the PTI chairman has to appear uh, in the Tosha Khana case on the 13th, and if he doesn't, then the police can obviously arrest him. But it's very unfortunate because it undermines the rule of law. So the rule of law and equal protection under the law, these are constitutional and well recognized principles of justice. So that means that the law is same for a simple man, for an ordinary citizen, or an ex-prime minister. And we have seen the prime ministers how they have been treated here, starting from Bhutto Saab, and then in recent past we saw how Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was treated. So this is really, in that sense, very embarrassing for our legal system, and it's very disappointing as a student of law, as a practitioner of law, that the equality before law is not being observed.
Right. Miss Ayesha, when we take a look at the situation, I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the issue of keeping the peace is a factor in terms of the way that the court proceedings also go forward. And even if we see this in terms of a large number of times that the relief has been given to the PTI chairman, is this something do you think is being done keeping in mind the kind of consequences that can possibly occur if this is not done so, and if the legal proceedings are not to go forward as they would if such relief is given to the PTI chairman?
Um, Thank you. I think, if I understood your question correctly, I think you are trying to address the point that Mr. Imran Khan is very popular. I mean, this is what the argument that's often given, that he's very popular and therefore he should not be expected to present himself in the courts or not follow the course of the law as an ordinary citizen would. I think that is a very weak argument. As your previous guest said, the law cannot have different standards for different people. It doesn't matter how popular you are. It doesn't matter what the consequences or the reaction amongst your fan base is. The law must take its course. There cannot be different standards for different people. And the one thing that I would like to point out is that the law, as a lawyer, we are taught that the law is based on precedent. Precedent holds a very important position in the study of and the practice of law. And so not only can we not see any precedent of this kind within Pakistan, with the exception of the Pervez Musharraf case that was also pointed out by a previous guest, but even worldwide, because I'm not in Pakistan, I'm in London at the moment, and even outside of Pakistan, in any common law jurisdiction, which is often compelling evidence within Pakistan, compelling authority in terms of how we argue our cases, you cannot find any precedent where the courts would be so accommodating towards somebody. And then,
Right.
further,
What do you think? What do you think is the reason behind this? Why is the PTI chairman being accommodated?
well, I think that is kind of sinister, if you ask me. I think he does have support within powerful quarters as well. But the way this is playing out now, because the law is based on precedent, it is also, if they continue to accommodate him, it sets a very dangerous precedent for the future as well. Because other people of Imran Khan then and say, why should we appear before courts if he's not expected to? So I think that, as your guest rightly said, the courts are running out of patience, as they should, because if they care about how the law is to be interpreted and applied within Pakistan, there's only so much leeway he can be given, and he's been already accommodated beyond the imagination and beyond the what one would think would be reasonable within any circumstance.
All right, Farrukh, considering this from the viewpoint of the PTI and the PTI leadership as well, it seems that if this is the case that the court may be running out of patience, how long do you think there is for the PTI to be able to also balance this out, especially when there is an election campaign on the horizon and the factors of security threats that are being cited are going to be questionable then if the campaign is joined by the PTI chairman?
Right, Sanam. Let me actually start with where you actually started, and you were saying that patience is running out. I think their worships must have an infinite, resource of patience, because it keeps running out, but it never ends. And that is not all. I mean, once again, he got an exception rather than a rule. He is going to be given another taste of patience, that he can appear before a court on 13th. Having said that, let me also remind you about this double standards of justice. I mean, we can talk about politics, who is how popular, but what I actually am looking at is that day after tomorrow, when a historian is going to write history of this time, how is he or she going to judge our judicial system? The fact is that the historian is going to write that the Honorable Supreme Court of Pakistan allowed a man to walk away with mandate of PMLQ and installed him as the Chief Minister of Punjab, who immediately then dismantled the assembly, and now today he has joined PTI as its president. Meanwhile, PMLQ remains a separate entity. So that is going to be something that we have to consider. As if that was not enough, we are told that actions are supposed to have consequences, and when you have consequences, the person who should be bearing the brunt of those consequences is the person who is responsible for that action. And in this case, Imran Khan Sahab one fine day decides to dissolve the Assembly of Punjab, and after that there is going to be an election, but our entire system scurries forward to actually get him the kind of relief he wants, a date for an election. And meanwhile, there are other justices who keep on saying that perhaps the whole idea of dismantling or dissolving an assembly by an installed chief minister wasn't that a great idea, and we should revisit that. Nobody listens to them, right? And they are actually sidelined. So I'm going to actually talk about this double standards, or perhaps two standards, because Imran Khan Sahab actually keeps on reminding us that societies were destroyed which had two standards of justice, one for the rich, one for the poor. And now what we have here is three levels of justice: one for the ordinary man, the other for the rich, because it is an elitist country, and third for Imran Khan Sahab. Immediately after a case is framed against him, he comes on television or Twitter. If you have seen his tweet today, he has actually tried to discredit the whole notion of case being framed against him. So and then whenever he goes to a court, what he does usually is he is accompanied by a mob, which is used as human shield. This we have discussed earlier as well. But what was astounding to me was that Imran Khan Sahab keeps on trying to actually dismiss or undermine any case which is registered against him. In the past, we had a precedent where a political party used to actually politicize cases against them, but they kept on still cooperating with the law, right? That is People's Party. While they complained a lot in front of media, they would go and face the music as well. This time it is not happening. So if Imran Khan Sahab really thinks that double standards destroy societies, I want to ask him, why do you want to destroy this society?
Right, and of course, whether or not that's going to have an impact on the party as well. Mr. Usama, the issue of the ECP also issuing available arrest warrants is something that is happening simultaneously as well. And I want to understand what this means in terms of the already the number of cases that are running simultaneously with regards to the PTI chairman, and now with the ECP going ahead with these arrest warrants as well. What does this mean practically? Because so far we've seen that even if the arrest warrants were there in the Tosha Khana reference, the police actually went to his residence in Lahore, nothing really happened and there was no arrest. So at this point, what do these bailable arrest warrants mean, and what sort of value will these even have in terms of what has happened so far?
So, Sana, in practical terms, and this is very unfortunate that I have to say, these bailable arrest warrants, they don't mean much at the moment, because in Tosha Khana reference, and there was a court, this is in the Election Commission of Pakistan, they had issued non-bailable arrest warrants, and Mr. Imran Khan chose not to. But what I also want to point out here, that it's really unfortunate, and it's part of broader malice of this country, that the Election Commission of Pakistan, which is a constitutional body which has power of contempt that are similar to the honorable courts of this country, High Court, our courts, in order or in many of the cases that eventually ended up favoring PTI and Imran Khan, they have weakened the authority of a constitutional body. So that is going to have long-term ramifications that about the autonomy, about the independence, and about the powers that the Election Commission enjoys. And these courts, constitutional courts, they have. We have to remember that the Election Commission of Pakistan is not a subordinate body to the courts. It's an independent constitutional institution. And these courts, they have chipped away at the powers of these constitutional body. And so that's why, in practical terms, these warrants, they don't mean much. But in terms of legal processes, since now they have issued bailable warrants, and if Imran Khan does not choose to appear, then they can also issue non-bailable warrants, so on and so forth. But this issue that whether Election Commission can initiate contempt proceedings is already pending before the Honorable Supreme Court and High Courts also. And it's remarkable that how can a body function if an ex-prime minister, one of the most popular politicians, is every day criticizing and threatening, in some cases, as we saw his leaders threatening the Election Commission and its officials. They cannot function because they have real danger and credible danger to their lives and their children, as one of the former ministers, Fawaz Chaudhry Sahab, threatened the Election Commission and their families. So that issue is still pending, but right now this is not where the real danger is. The real danger is Tosha Khana for Imran Khan.
All right, Ms. Ayesha, the issue with regards to what Mr. Usama was saying seems to be that despite the fact that there are these developments happening, it seems that it's only procedural and lack the kind of substance and value that there is. And if that is so, when we talk about the relief given to the PTI chairman, or the fact that these are the options that he has moving forward, it seems that there isn't much space to be able to exercise any measures to get the kind of justice that is required in this situation. What do you think are the possibilities for the ECP or the courts or the political setup to actually ensure any sort of consequence? Because it's been perhaps more than a year that we haven't really seen that happening.
Yes, and that makes you wonder about the power of the state and the competence of the state, because in the past one has seen the state come down very hard on people, on ex-prime ministers and all the way down to political activists. When the state is determined, they get people very quickly. And in this case, there's been almost a year that has gone by, and there are many cases out there outstanding. And in some cases, for instance, the Tyrion White case, I think, is a pretty much open and shut case. And I was, to be honest, I was very, very surprised sitting as an overseas Pakistani when Mr. Imran Khan became Prime Minister, that in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, somebody with his kind of character baggage would be able to become the Prime Minister of our country. Because to be honest, I mean, the counter argument to that people have always given, his supporters have always brought forth, is that this is his personal life and that it should not affect his political career. But to be honest, in countries that do not call themselves Islamic republics, but merely call themselves democracies, these kind of issues are very important when a political leader is standing for election. And I would like to remind your viewers about John Edwards, who was a political contender for the office of president in the United States, and it was discovered that he had a child out of wedlock and that he had not revealed. And for that reason, he had to drop out of the race. He could no longer stand for president, even though there is no 62, 63 Sadiq and Amin, provisions in the United States Constitution, but just on moral grounds, on principles that what is acceptable to the electorate and what is not acceptable to the electorate, on moral grounds, he had to drop out of the race. So it is very surprising that someone like Imran Khan, with that baggage, was allowed to become, with a default paternity judgment against him in a Los Angeles court. And interestingly enough, I was studying law in Los Angeles when that judgment came out. And it was very embarrassing as a Pakistani to have that, even though he was not a politician at that time. He was just, had recently, I think, retired from cricket or was still playing, I'm not sure. But when that judgment came out, it was very embarrassing. It was all over the press in the United States. And to have someone like that, he's never contended these allegations that have been made against him in the press internationally. The international press is full of, you can just Google it and you'll get all kinds of newspapers reporting about, his paternity as linked to Tehran White. And yet in Pakistan, a blind eye was put on this whole issue, and the court had earlier dismissed it. And now, I think that is a very open and shut case, which if they wanted, they could have gotten him very quickly. But the state has been very, very reticent, very, not forthcoming at all when it comes to bringing justice to Mr. Imran Khan's deeds and actions. And so we have this situation where we have a person who reminds me in a way of, Donald Trump, a schoolyard bully tactics that, you can't come after me because I will do this and I will have these kind of consequences and so many people support me. Well, if the state becomes intimidated by that kind of rhetoric, that reflects very poorly on the state then.
Right. But in terms of where we stand today, what do you think can possibly be the action or step taken by the government or the judiciary in terms of moving forward with the PTI chairman, and whether or not, in your opinion, you think that something perhaps has evolved in terms of how he is perceived or where he stands today than he did before his ouster last year?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well. Could you repeat?
Yes, my question was, so as of where we stand today, what sort of step do you think that the government or the judiciary can take moving forward to ensure that moving forward in these cases or otherwise, the kind of consequences that need to exist are there? Because it's perhaps not just these cases, it's also so many other things which many other politicians have also gotten away with. And so what sort of a change do you think is necessary for that sort of an option to exist for that consequence? Because a lot of it is taken in political rhetoric, a lot of it is taken as part of the game and doesn't really see much in terms of consequence. And also, what do you think is the current position of the PTI chairman, especially since his ouster last year? Is anything evolved in a way that perhaps talks of consequence?
Well, about your first question, what can the government do? What can the judiciary do? Well, the judiciary can stop giving him all these allowances, which make, in a way, make the judicial system seem very uneven and unequal. In terms of what the government can do, I think the government needs to think through and be a little more brave about how they're going to cope with this situation. Because if you say, that you're going to go and arrest him and then you come back empty-handed, to borrow a phrase from, I think, the IG, make a claim that you're not going to come without empty-handed, and yet you return empty-handed, you actually strengthen the person who is making all these claims about being very popular and powerful. You make it seem like you are being intimidated by him. So when you decide to take action, you must follow through on it. There must be no empty threats, because I think that reflects again very poorly on the state. And your second question, I think, has there been any evolution? I think one of the big problems that Imran Khan has always kind of alluded to in the Pakistani political system, he's always talked about how our political parties are dynastic and just based on families and not evolved properly in terms of political parties. Well, that is true, but he could have set a different example, but unfortunately his party is not even based on a family. It's based on one person. So at least in a family you have 3 or 4 people. So for instance, if one is disqualified, the others are in a position to step up and carry the mantle forward. In Imran Khan's party, he has no family to back him up, and he's just one person, and nobody can seem to take his place. Nobody is allowed to even come. So it's also not an evolved political party in that sense. And if Imran Khan, that's why I think they are so scared that if Mr. Imran Khan is disqualified, the party might just dismantle completely, because there's no successor whatsoever to him.
Right. Farrukh, when we take a look at the situation in terms of the different political parties and, of course, the current political and economic situation that the country is going through, there is so much that we hope for from the political decision makers as well. But at the moment now, considering PTI and the rest of the parties and, of course, the institutions such as like the judiciary, it seems that there's a lot to question as to what is happening. But is that largely the perception also from the public in terms of where the parties are standing to actually call them out on what they're doing, where the justice is lacking? Or do you think that largely it still is what really goes is the political setup or the political mindset that is being developed by different parties, and the real issues or substances that we're talking about aren't really much of a concern?
Right, Sana. Particularly, there are a couple of things that were said earlier. I mean, for example, Tyrion White's case, and that is quite an interesting situation, because usually I don't actually comment on personal issues, and I'm not going to do it either today. Whatever happened at that time. I think that speaks more to the societal hypocrisy of this so-called conservative society rather than anything else. But regardless of that, I think that the matter is only technical and it is legal, right? And legal because the former Prime Minister was supposed to declare along with the assets his family members also, and he did not. So that becomes a problem, and it can actually seriously disqualify him as well. But clearly, when it comes to popularity, unpopularity, it is not a factor before the electorate, and that's why he keeps on getting the kind of results that he has seen so far. But having said that, there is something very interesting going on, and you have to look at that. Let me actually conjure up an image, and that is of black holes, right? Where they say that when you start closing in to event horizon of a black hole, there is time dilation, right? So whosoever is caught inside that bubble, for that things are happening very fast. But for outsiders, it is a different story. It is happening very slowly. So it seems that many things have happened, and we are still observing from outside, and that's why it seems that they haven't happened yet. So inevitably, it seems that there is this effort within the system to build up Imran Khan as this popular person who is going to get many votes, and but he is also simultaneously a boogeyman, right? For example, yesterday I gave you example of elections that took place in the recent past by-elections particularly. There were 20 seats that were vacated because of the 63A verdict, and there his party got 10 seats. Then there was another one where 8 member seats were in contest, and he actually contested from 6 and he 7 and he won 6. So that was also very interesting. After that, there is hardly any precedent or example whether he got any further votes, because the narrative keeps on shifting. Remember, on the day when Imran Khan Sahab was removed from power, he was thought to be very unpopular, but suddenly he became popular, right? So what happens next? After that, his party members keep on resigning from National Assembly, and if they were exactly as popular, they would have contested elections, returned to it, returned to the parliament and removed the opposition leader whenever they wanted. That did not happen. They have gone for stay in the courts. So my question is, there is one more election after that that takes place, and that is in southern Punjab, Rajanpur, which produced their former chief minister, and where we know that Ligharis have a substantial standing, and 80,000 votes have been historically been with them. So they are allowed to actually conduct elections, others are not. So my question is it that the system is allowing this image to emerge that Imran Khan is very popular, wherever he can lose, he's not contesting, wherever he can, he is allowed to actually carry the election, and after that, somehow, if you have seen Gallup's survey, he is number one, or he's shown as the leading, the most popular one. But the last question is quite interesting, and that is about the possibility of a political party based on technocrats. And many people have actually shown their favor, they have been in favor of that. So my question is it possible that Imran Khan is basically a boogeyman? You keep on looking at his popularity, but it is merely to frighten you. Eventually we have to have what has happened already, but we cannot know, and that is technocratic government.
That's an interesting thought, and much to think about for our viewers as well. Mr. Usama, the issue with regards to the number of cases, which I also want to understand and clarify for everyone's watching, is what sort of a relationship exists between these cases as well, the dynamics of one impacting the other. You referred, the Tosha Khana reference is the most important, perhaps the most potentially dangerous one for the PTI chairman, but I also want to understand how, while these simultaneous cases are going forward, each is impacting the other.
So, Ayesha, I think there are broadly 3 types of cases against Imran Khan. One are of corruption cases that involves Tosha Khana. The other is of moral turpitude. Tyrion White case is one of the most dangerous and open.
Is it moral turpitude or misdeclaration?
In technically speaking, misdeclaration, but stems from the broader moral turpitude also. And the third one is ECP, Election Commission related matters in which PTI chairman has been disqualified, and also contempt charges, and emanating from these charges is also terrorism charges involving hearing or non-appearance or inciting the workers. So these are like 3-4 broad categories. I think two of the most significant cases, and perhaps very open and shut cases, one is Tosha Khana reference, and the other is this Tyrion White case. But as you asked Ayesha and also Pitafi Saab, and Pitafi Saab also gave a reference of this black hole and how PTI workers, and you know
I was not comparing PTI workers with black holes. Come on.
What I meant is there's a different perception. There's different types of realities that PTI workers and broadly the other world they are living in. So I think one of the problems stem from, you asked Ayesha, what is the way forward? And I think one of the way forwards is that this system lacks credibility. And it doesn't matter if Tyrion White is an open and shut case or Tosha Khana he stole. There's no dearth of evidence that he literally stole and that entire corruption story in Punjab, Farrukh, Gogi and co. But his core base is not ready to buy it. And I think that is very damning indictment of the system itself. If the people see, what they see is that there's no rule of law. It is on what side of the system you happen to fall. So previously it was Nawaz Sharif, and before him it was Zardari Saab. So there's no credibility left in the system. So for the people, the merits of the case do not matter, and ultimately it appears that the rule of law or accountability, it is, as the Honorable Supreme Court has said, it is just a tool for persecution. And there's a strong perception amongst, especially amongst PTI people, and also generally there's perhaps a case to be made that all of these charges, they were there while he was Prime Minister and he was putting his opponents in jail. Why weren't they pursued that time? Because Imran Khan at that time happened to be on the right side of the system. Now he's on the wrong system. He has gotten a very long leeway. I accept no one in Pakistan political history has gotten that long a leash, but still he's being harassed. So that is ultimately an indictment of the system, and this selective accountability won't get us far as a nation, and the system won't even if they manage to hang Imran Khan or disqualify, the credibility of the system won't be strengthened by the selective accountability.
Right. So help me understand who's going to hold the system accountable.
I think it's the political parties. They have to come, sit on table, and start with the bare minimum common agenda. So it has to be a political process. Otherwise, the danger is, as Pitafi Sahab pointed out, that this whispers that you hear in Islamabad of a technocratic setup. Technocratic setups have not worked in Pakistan. They have destroyed Pakistan. In recent history, we saw the experiment of the Shaukat Aziz Sahab. The man has been never back once he left with his briefcase. Before that, we also saw in 90s. So technocratic setups have never helped. Pakistan is too complex to be governed by the technocrats. There's a lot more diversity. It's a federation. So I think the danger is that ultimately people lose belief. They lose the system loses credibility, and it's going to harm us.
All right. Ms. Ayesha, I want to understand whether or not you think there is space for us to be able to question the credibility of the system, as Mr. Usama was saying, because it seems that a lot of what needs to be said or needs to be pointed out is restricted perhaps by the space provided to the people, to the leaders, to be able to call out the judiciary or the judges or the institutions. And there is, of course, a lot of talk about contempt of court that comes in whenever there is anybody speaking up against the courts or talking about what should have happened or not. Is there even space for us, for the people or the political setup, to be able to talk about the credibility of the system in order to even initiate this conversation for a change to occur?
Excellent question. But before I address it, I just want to point out regarding the credibility of the state that I think Usama had pointed out, I think that's a relevant point. That is, I think the diagnosis is correct. However, I think the political situation in Pakistan is so polarized, and Pakistan is not the only country that is experiencing this political polarization at the moment. It seems to be almost a global trend. And when the politics of a country is so polarized and you have alternate realities that people want to believe in, you will never be able to convince everybody. So I think the way to deal with that, in my humble opinion, is not necessarily to try to gain credibility from the opposing side, but to assert yourself when you have the power to do so. And I don't mean, when I say assert yourself, I don't mean use illegal means. I don't mean ban the political opponent's speeches or anything like that, but follow through on what you have decided to do. Don't appear weak. Don't appear like you can be intimidated. I really don't think that the PTI supporters will ever consider the PDM government credible, and perhaps vice versa. So unfortunately, I think we are so polarized right now that we cannot really have a situation where everybody is happy with the state. Also, I think in terms of the way forward about the political parties sitting together and agreeing on a bare minimum, well, that was done in the Charter of Democracy. But then Mr. Imran Khan was propped up as an alternative to the, old political guard. And we know how that all panned out and where that took us. In terms of a technocrat setup, I think Pakistan is so out of ideas. I mean, we have tried that, we have tested that in the past. It hasn't done much for us. So as messy as democracy is, I think we need to just muddle through it. And it's a bad time for Pakistan right now, but we can overcome if we stick to certain basic norms. And addressing your point about, do we have that space? No, we don't. And that is very, very critical. We need to expand that space for dissent. We need to be able to say what we feel, not only contempt laws, but things like blasphemy laws prevent people from, I really don't think there is free speech in Pakistan. And free speech is one of the fundamentals of a flourishing democracy. You cannot have a thriving democracy if you curtail speech. So it is very, very important for us to broaden the horizon on that score.
Right, absolutely. And Farrukh, the situation at the moment, of course, again, is uncertain. But in terms of where we stand today, and especially the political and economic crisis and the kind of things we're questioning, is there anybody also thinking about these fundamental and structural changes? Because we keep referring to these in economic terms or political terms as well, and again come to the conclusions of what should happen, but there is really nothing moving in that direction.
Right, Sana. Now, quick counter question. 75 years have passed since this country was created, and we have been hearing that there has to be a structural change. There hasn't been. Are you still hopeful that there is going to be any structural change? Look, earlier you asked me who's going to judge the system. So my answer is history will judge, certainly will judge the system, and it is already judging it, right? In 75 years, and this is a sad bit about our politics, that I totally get it, the technocratic governments, whatever they were, whatever the nature was, although this time the proposed model is a little bit different than the military dictatorships that were usually there. But if they have not worked, military dictatorship has also not worked, then democracy doesn't seem to work either. So in this country, if historian is going to write something about Pakistan's politics, he is going to say nothing works. And this is my concern, and repeatedly I've been saying this. You know, I'm not a very ideological man, and whatever I'm going to say now, had it been a soap opera, I'm sure there would have been sad music playing in the background.
Okay.
But let me qualify what. The only desire I've been driven by throughout my life is to actually seek approval of the state. Like mother, a child actually wants to please the mother, right? So I have always tried to keep up and keep on reinventing. And God, I'm dizzy right now.
Right.
2 years ago, Imran Khan was everything. We were told that we have to worship the ground where he walks, right? Before that, Mian Nawaz Sharif was the same man. Somewhere in between him, Pervez Musharraf was the similar kind of man. Before that, Maulanas were supposed to be a gift of God. And now everybody, one by one, keeps on falling wayside. So my question is, kindly pick a lane, whatever lane it is, dictatorship, technocracy, democracy, or whatever it is. Earlier it was said that there is hardly any free speech in the country. Let me bear testimony to the fact that I have had the luxury of speaking my mind all the time.
That's
right? But the problem is perhaps I'm from a mainstream community. Perhaps minorities might not have that kind of freedom, but let us hope we keep on struggling for that. This was all I had to say.
Absolutely. Thank you, Farrukh. Thank you, Mr. Usama. Thank you, Ms. Ayesha, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. There is much, of course, that remains to be seen, but we hope that we have the courage to be able to call out and assert ourselves and be able to say what is right. And hopefully, we see the kind of change that we have always wanted to see. That's all we have from the debate. We'll see you tomorrow.